Hello everyone, my name is Akshay. Today our topic is the personality and characters ethics. At the same time, in addition to my research on perceptions, I was also deeply immersed in an in-depth study of the success literally published in the United States since 1776. I was reading or scanning literally hundreds of books, articles, and easy essays in fields such as self improvement, popular psychology, and self help. At my fingertips was the sum and substance of what a free and dumb Orientic people considered to be the keys to successful living. As my study looked me back through 200 years of reading about success, I noticed a starting pattern emerging in the content of the literature because of our own pain and because of similarly pain I had seen in the lives and relationship of many people I had worked with through the years. I began to feel more and more that much of the success literally of the past 50 years was superficial. It was filled with social image, consequence, techniques, and quick fixes with social band aids and experience that addresses acute problems and sometimes even operate to solve them temporarily but left the underlying chronic problems untouched to faster and resource fast time and again. In strict contrast, almost all the literally in the first 150 years or so focused on what could be called the character ethic as the foundations of success. Things like integrity, humility, fidelity, temperance, courage, justice, patencies, industries, simplicity, modesty, and the golden rule. Benjamin Franklin's autobiography is representative of that ill natural. It is basically the story of one man's effort to integrate certain principles and habits deep within his natural. The character ethic taught that there are basic principles of effective living and that people can only experience true success and enduring happiness as they learn and integrate these principles into their basic character. But shortly after World War I, the basic view of success shifted from the character ethic to what we might call the personality ethic. Success become more a functions of personality, of public image, of attitudes and behaviors, skills and techniques that liberate the process of human interactions. The personality ethic essential to two parts. One was human and public relations techniques, and the other was positive mental attitude PMA. Some of the philosophy was expressed in inspiring and sometimes valid maxims such as your attitude determines your altitude. Smiling wins more friends than frowning, and whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe it can achieve. Other parts of the personality approach were clearly manipulations, even deceptive, encouraging people to use techniques to get other people to like them or to fake interest in the hobbies of others to get out of them what they wanted or to use the power look or to imitate their way through life. Some of these ill naturals acknowledged character as an intermediate of success, but tended to compartmentalize it rather than recognitions. It was foundational and catalytic. Reference to the character authentic become mostly lip service. The basic thrust was cube, fixed influence, techniques, power, strengths, communication skills, and positive attitudes. This personality ethic I began to realize was the subconscious source of the solution Sandra and I were attempting to use with our son. As I thought more deeply about the difference between the personality and character ethics, I realized that Sandra and I had been getting social mileage out of our children's good behavior, and in our eyes, this son simply didn't measure up our image of ourselves, and our role as good caring parents was even deeper than our image of our son, and perhaps influenced it. There was a lot more wrapped up in the way we were seeing and handling the problem that our concern for our son's welfare. As Sandra and I talked, we become painfully aware of the powerful influence of our one character and motives and of our perceptions of him. We knew that social comparisons motives were out of harmony with our deeper values and could lead to conditional love and eventual to our sons lends the sense of self-worth, so we determine to focus our efforts on us, not on our techniques but on our deeps motives and our perceptions of him. Instead of trying to change him, we tried to stand apart, to separate us from him and to sense his identity, individuality, and separate and worth through deep thought and the exercise of faith and prayer. We began to see our son in terms of his own uniqueness. We saw within him layers and layers of potential that would be realized at his own pace and speed. We decide to relax and get out of his way and let his own personality emerge. We saw our natural role as begin to affirm, enjoy, and value him. We also consistently worked on our motivates and cultivated internal source of security so that our own feelings of worth were not dependent on our children's acceptable acceptable behavior. As we loosed up our old perceptions of our son and development value based motives, new feelings began to emerge. We found ourselves enjoying him instead of comparing our judging him. We stopped trying to clone him in our own image or measure him against social exceptions. We stopped trying to kindly positively manipulations him into an acceptable social mold because we saw him as fundamentally adequate and able to cope with life. We stopped protecting him against the ridicule of others. He had been neutered on this protection, so he went through some withdrawal pains which he accepted and which we accepted but did not necessarily respond to. We don't need to protected you was the unspoken message. You are fundamental okay. As the weeks and months passed, he began to feel a quite confidence and affirmed himself. He began to blossom at his own pace and speed. He became outstanding as measured by standard social criteria economically, social, and athletically at a rapid clip far beyond the so called natural developmental process. As the years passed, he was elected to several study book body leadership positions, developed into an all-state athlete, and started bringing home strength. A report cards he developed an engineering and Gleason's personality that has enabled him to relate in non-threatening ways to all kinds of people. Sandra and I believe that our son's social impressive accomplishments were more a serendipitous expressions of the feelings he had about himself than merely a response to social reward. This was an amazing experience for Sandra and me, and a very instructional in dealing with our other children and in other roles as well. It brought to our awareness on a very personal level the virtual difference between the personality, authentic, and the characteristic of success. The placemently express our conventions will search your own heart, will all realizations for out of it flow the issues of life. Now, new point, primary and secondary greatness. My experience with my son, my study of perceptions, and my reading of the success literally coalesced to create of those aha experience in life when suddenly things click into place. I was suddenly able to see the powerful impact of the personality, ethic, and to clearly understand those subtle, often consciously unified descriptions between what I knew to be true, some things I had been taught many years ago as a child, and things that were deep in my own inner sense of value, and the quick fixed philosophies that shielded me every day. I understood at a deeper level why, as I had worked through the years with people from all walks of life, I had found that the things I was teaching and knew to be effectively were often at variance with those popular voice. I am not suggesting that elements of the personality, authentic personality, growth, communication skill, training, and education in the field of influence, strategies, and positive thinking are not beneficial. In fact, sometimes essential for success. I believe they are, but these are secondary, not primary traits. Perhaps in utilizing our human capacity to build on the foundations of generations before us, we have inadvertently become so focused on our one building that we have forgotten the foundations that holds it up, or in repairing for so long where we have not sown. Perhaps we have forgotten the need to sow. If I try to use human influence strategies and tactics of how to get other people to do what I want, to work better, to be more motivated, to like me and each other, while my character is fundamentally flawed, marked by duplicity and insincerity, then in the long run I cannot be successful. My duplicity will breed distractions, and everything I do, even using the so called good human relations techniques, will be perceived as manipulations. It simply makes no difference how good the rhetoric is, or even how good the intentions are, if there is little or not trust. There is no foundations for permanent success. Only basic goodness gives life to technique. To focus on technique is like cramming your way through schools. You sometimes get by, perhaps even get good grade, but if you don't pay the price day in and day out, you never achieve true mastery of the subject you study or develop an educated mind. Did you ever consider how ridiculous it would be to try to cram on a frame to forget to plant in the spring play all summer and the cream in the fall to bringing in the harvest? The farm is a natural system. The price must be paid and the process followed. You always reap what you sow. There is no shortcut. This principle is also true ultimately in human behavior, in human relationship. They too are natural system based on the law of the harvest. In the short run, in an artificial social system such as school, you may be able to get by him you if you learn how to manipulate the man-made rules to play the game. In most one-shot or short-lived human interactions, you can use the personality aesthetic to get by and to make favorable impressions through charm and skill and pretending to be interested in other people's hobbies. You can pick up quick, easy techniques that may work in short term situations, but secondary traits alone have no permanent worth in long term relationship. Eventual, if there is not deep integrity and fundamental character strength, the challenges of life will gives true motives to surface, and human relationship failure will replace short-term success. Many people with secondary greatness, that is social recognition for their talents, lack primary greatness or godness in their characters. Sooner or later you see this in every long term relationship they have, whether it is with a business associate, a spouse, a friend, or a teenage child going through an identity crisis. It is character that communicate most. As Emerson once put it, what you are shot so loudly in my ears, I cannot hear what you say. There are, of course, situations where people have character strength but they lack communication skill, and that undoubtedly affects the quality of relationship as well, but the effects are still secondary. In the last analysis, what we are communicates far more eloquently than anything we say or do. We all know it. There are people we trust absolutely because we know their character, whether their equipment or not, whether they have the human relationship techniques or not. We trust them and we work successfully with them. In the words of William George Jordan, into the hands of every individual is given a marvelous power for good or evil, the silent, unconscious, unseen influence of his life. This is simply the constant radiations of what man really is, not what he pretends to be. Now, new point: the power of a paradigm. Paradigm. The seven habits of highly effectively people embody many of the fundamental principles of human effectiveness. These habits are basic, they are primary, they represent the internalizations of correct principle upon which enduring happiness and success are based. But before we can really understand these seven habits, we need to understand our own paradigms. and how to make a paradigm shift. Both the character authentic and personality authentic are examples of social paradigms. The word paradigm comes from the Greek. It was originally a scientific term and is more commonly used today to mean a model, theory, perceptions, assumptions, or frame or reference. In the more general sense, it's the way we see the world, not in terms of our visual sense of sight, but in terms of perceiving, understanding, interpreting. For our percepts, a simple way to understand paradigms is to see them as maps. We all know that the map is not the theory. A map is simply an explanation of certain aspects of the theory. That's exactly what a paradigm is. It is a theory and explanations or model of something else. Both the character authentic, the personality authentic are example to social paradigms. The word paradigm comes from the Greek. It was original a scientific term and is more commonly used today to mean a model theory, perception, assumptions, or frame of reference. In the more general sense, it is the way we see the word, not in terms of our visual sense of sight, but in terms of perception, understanding, interpreting. For our percepts, a simple way to understand paradigms is to see them as maps. We all know that the map is not the theory. A map is simple and explanations of certain aspects of the theory. That's exactly what a paradigm is. It is a theory and explanations or model of something else. Suppose you wanted to arrive at a specific locations in central Chicago. A street map of the city would be a great help to you in reaching your destinations. But suppose you were given the wrong map through a printing error. The map labeled Chicago was actual a map of Deity. Can you imagine the frustrations, the ineffectiveness of trying to reach your destinations? You might work on your behavior. You could try harder, be more diligent, double your speed, but your efforts would only succeed in getting you to the wrong place faster. You might work on your attitude. You could think more positively. You still wouldn't get to the right place, but perhaps you wouldn't care. Your attitude would be so positive, you'd be happy wherever you were. The point is, you'd still be lost. The fundamental problems has nothing to do with your behavior or your attitude. It has everything to do with having a wrong map. If you have the right map of Chicago, then diligence becomes important, and when you encounter frustrating obstacles along the way, then attitude can make a real difference. But the first and most important requirement is the accuracy of the map. Each of us has many maps in our head, which can be divided into too many categories: maps of the way things are or relatives, and maps of the way things should be or values we interpreted. Everything we experience through these mental maps, we seldom question their accuracy. We are usually even unaware that we have them. We simply assume that the way we see things is the way they really are or the way they should be, and our attitudes and behaviors grow out of these assumptions. The way we see things is the source of the way we think and the way we act. Before going any further, I invite you to have an intellectuals and emotional experience. Take a few seconds and just look at the picture on the opposite page. You look at the picture on page 34 and carefully describe what you see. Do you see a woman? How old would you say she is? What does she looks like? What is she wearing in the what kind of roles do you see her? You probably would describe the woman in the second picture to be about 25-year old, very lovely, rather fashionable with her patented nose and her demure presence. If you were a single man, you might like to take her out. If you were in relating, you might hire her as a fashion model. But what if I were to tell you that you're wrong? What if I said this picture is of a woman in her 60s or 70s who looks sad, has a hug noise, and is certainly no model? She's someone you probably would have across the street. Who's right? Look at the picture again. Can you see the old woman? If you cannot, keep trying. Can you see her big hook noise? Her soul. If you and I were talking face to face, we would could discuss the pictures. You could describe what you see to me, and I could talk to you about what I see. We could continue to communicate until you clearly showed me what you see in the picture, and I clearly showed you what I see. Because we cannot do that, turn to page 53 and study the picture there and then look at the picture again. Can you see the old woman now? It's important that you see her before you continue reading. I first encountered this exercise many years ago at the Harvard Business School. The instructors was using it to demonstrate clearly and elucidable that two people can see the same thing, disagree, and yet both be right. It's not logic, it's psychological. He brought into the room a stack of large cards, half of which had the image of the young woman you saw on page 33, and the other half of which had the image of the old woman on page 53. He passed them out to the class, the picture of the young woman to one side of the room and the picture of the old woman to the other. He asked us to look at the cards, concentrate on them for about 10 seconds, and then pass them back in. He then projected upon the screen the picture you saw on page 34, combining both image, and asked the class to describe what they saw. Almost every person in that class who had first seen the young woman's image on a card saw the young woman in the picture, and almost every person who had first seen the old woman's image on a card saw an old woman in the picture. The professor then asked one student to explain what he saw to a student on the opposite side of the room. As they talked back and forth, communications problems flared up. What do you mean, old lady? She could not be more than 20 or 22 years old. Oh, come on. You have to be joking. She is 17s, could be pushing 18s. What's the matter with you? Are you blind? This lady is young, good looking. I'd like to take her out. She is lovely. Lovely, she's an old hug. The arguments went back and forth, each person sure of an adamant in his or her position. All of this occurred in spite of an executing important advantage. The student had most of them knew early in the demonstrations. The another point of view did in fact exist, something many of us would never admit, never helpless at first. Only a few students really try to see this picture for another frame of reference. Thank you.